So we just received a decision from the Supreme Court in the ATF's frames and receivers rule case, and it's not good. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think the ATF's rule on frames and receivers is clearly unconstitutional, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you take a look into USCCA, and I will leave a link to them down below if you're interested. So like I mentioned in the intro, we just received news from the Supreme Court. This is coming out maybe just 30 minutes ago, and it's not good news. We were all anticipating that the Supreme Court would eventually release this order. We knew it was coming, and this is all in regards to the ATF's rule on frames and receivers. If you're not familiar what this case is, this is the Vanderstock v. Garland case. This was a lawsuit which was originally decided by a Texas Federal District Court judge, Judge Reed O'Connor. That judge recently ruled that the ATF's rule on frames and receivers is in fact invalid and goes beyond the ATF's authority. Therefore, he granted the plaintiffs their motion for summary judgment and vacated the frames and receivers rule, and that was a nationwide injunction. That was a huge win, but the ATF didn't want to take that loss. In response, they filed an appeal up to the Fifth Circuit and also requested a stay of that judgment from the Fifth Circuit. Well, the Fifth Circuit reviewed that request for a stay and ultimately denied the ATF's request for a stay. The ATF then decided that, again, they weren't going to take that loss, so they filed an emergency application up to the Supreme Court, requesting that the Supreme Court, in fact, grant a stay in their favor. The emergency application requested that the Supreme Court issue a stay on that lower court vacatur, or in the alternative, that the Supreme Court take up the entire Vanderstock case and do a writ of cert before judgment. A writ of cert before judgment is simply a legal mechanism where the Supreme Court can bypass lower court review and take up review on their own before the case is resolved in the lower courts. What that means is that the ATF decided to say to the Supreme Court that if the court does not grant their stay, they wanted the Supreme Court to take up the entire case, take it all up for review, and rule on the case without waiting to see maybe how the Fifth Circuit Lower Court of Appeals decided to come out on this issue. In response to that, Justice Alito, who was in charge of the Fifth Circuit, took up that emergency application and then originally set some replies and responses to be set, and then also set for a potential decision on it. And I believe that was like 2 weeks ago on Friday or last Friday. And then he extended it out additionally. I think last Friday, he set it to be resolved essentially this upcoming Tuesday. He extended the administrative stay. So the stay on the frames and receivers rule remained in place and remained in place until today. And we are anticipating that we would get some sort of decision today. And there was a lot of speculation about why the court decided to extend out the potential stay, why there was the administrative stay being extended, what maybe they were going to do. And a lot of people were saying, well, maybe there's going to be some sort of dissent. Well, today we got an order from the court. And the order of the court, I will be outright and upfront with you guys, is not in our favor. It is in the ATF's favor. So here is what the Supreme Court said. Here's the order that just came out. It says the application for stay presented to Justice Alito and by him referred to the court is granted. Now, there's more to that, but what that means is, and I had broken this down multiple times in prior videos, there were still some people saying, well, Alito is going to decide this on his own. That's not true. Most of the time when these emergency applications go to one specific justice who's in charge of maybe something like the Fifth Circuit, it's oftentimes referred to the full court, and then the full court decides on that issue. That's exactly what happened here. It went originally to Justice Alito. He did some of the administrative stuff, and then it got passed on and referred to the full court for the full Supreme Court to decide what they wanted to do on this issue. And ultimately what they decided is to grant the ATF stay. So the frames and receivers rule is still going to be in effect. Now, what's critical here is what else they did in this order. It states that on June 30th, 2023, order and July 5th, 2023 judgment of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas, and then they say the case number, insofar as they vacate the final rule of the ATF, are stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit and disposition of a petition for a writ of certiorari, if such a writ is timely sought. Should certiorari be granted, this stay shall terminate automatically. In the event certiorari is granted, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment of this court. And then it states Justice Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh would deny the application for stay. So there's a few things there that we need to cover, which is really important. So yes, the Supreme Court issued a stay in favor of the ATF. But what that order says as well is that they stay in favor of the ATF, meaning that the ATF can enforce this final rule on frames and receivers. That stay will remain in place during the entire Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision, and then also during the period of time when the ATF potentially, or either side potentially, could go up to the Supreme Court and seek further Supreme Court review. So a stay on the frames and receivers decision by the district court, no matter what, is going to remain in place until ultimately the entire case is resolved. So for the foreseeable future, the ATF will be able to enforce the frames and receivers rule. That's really important, and it's very interesting that the Supreme Court went the extra kind of step, went beyond what was kind of being requested. This is very much in the ATF's favor. Again, I want to make that very much clear, because here the Supreme Court is saying during the entire process, during the Fifth Circuit appeals, and then even after that coming back to us, we are going to keep the stay in place. And then what's interesting is they have the poll of the justices who would have denied the ATF stay. It was Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. The two conservative or right-leaning justices who are absent there are obviously Roberts. Roberts is kind of always a wild card, so could be expected. And then the interesting one is Amy Coney Barrett. It's interesting that, Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett have joined the other side, have joined the left-leaning side when it came to the ATF's frames and receivers rule and granting their stay, joined that side and went against our Second Amendment rights. So that's very concerning, and the hope is that maybe with the bump stock cases currently looming, like the Cargill case that is seeking Supreme Court review, that the ATF is pushing for Supreme Court review. Then you have the ATF's pistol brace rule currently that's being still litigated in the Fifth Circuit, was sent back down to the district court, but really soon we should get a decision on the preliminary injunction from Judge Reed O'Connor once again in the Mock v. Garland case. That one is the pistol brace rule case. So we're going to get a decision from that really soon. And all this, in my mind, is setting up some red flags that maybe the Supreme Court might not be in our favor as much as we anticipated, especially when you have Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joining the other side to grant the ATF stay in this specific case dealing with the ATF's rule on frames and receivers. The hope was that the Supreme Court would deny the ATF stay and would allow for that lower court decision to be in effect, the vacatur of the frames and receivers rule. But again, for the foreseeable future, the ATF will still be able to enforce their frames and receivers rule. And that will remain in place during the remainder of the appeals in the Fifth Circuit and a potential writ of certiorari or a seeking of review from the Supreme Court. So that is the update here in the Vanderstock v. Garland case. I know probably a lot of people are going to be talking about it or maybe saying they don't understand why Alito referred it to the full court. That was always going to happen. And, the really bad thing about this is, again, that stay is going to remain in place for a significant long period of time, pretty much for the remainder of this case. And so the ATF will still be able to enforce that frames and receivers rule. And then further, it just signals that maybe the Supreme Court will not be so negative against the ATF and other potential rules like their bump stock rule, which is currently seeking Supreme Court review. We were all anticipating that would be a big case. Now it's concerning that you have Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joining the other side, and then also could potentially be negative for an upcoming positive pistol brace decision, because the ATF will likely now be emboldened to simply go up to the Supreme Court, cry once again, saying that they need a stay on any positive decision that goes against them. So again, not good news, not what a lot of people were hoping for, but this is just the way things happen. It's not always good news. Some things go against us, some things are not in our favor, and the hope is that by the time some of these other cases make their way up to the Supreme Court, by the time maybe they take up review of something like the Cargill bump stock case, maybe we can win over people like Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, get them back over to our side, persuade them so that they don't side with the ATF. Now, again, this wasn't a decision on the ultimate merits of the case. This was simply an emergency application for a stay. So it doesn't mean that signals entirely how Roberts or Amy Coney Barrett would rule on a determination of the merits of a case. But it is in some ways concerning that they still sided with the ATF. So again, that's the update. That's what the Supreme Court decided to do. That's the order that they issued. If you guys have any questions, let me know down below and I will try to answer the best of my ability. If you like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of 2A news. As always, I want to thank everybody who likes, comments, subscribes, who hits the notification bell, who shares these videos. You guys are directly impacting these videos impacting this channel and helping me to reach and educate more people than I could ever do on my own. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.